Hello, hello, hello. G'day, folks. Everyone's joining us. Andrew here. Hello, Tracy, Sheen.
Hello, Andrew Griffiths. Hello, Amy and Ashley and Cassandra. I feel like, who was it, Miss Helena from the Romper Room? I see Miriam and Linda.
It's great. The fact that you figured out how to get online here on a Zoom webinar, we're taking that as you've passed our strict criteria for you joining this webinar. But we've had quite a few people joining. We've got a lot of stuff to cover. We're going to let everyone there. We're streaming live. We've got tricks, tips, all kinds of things to have happening here. The lovely Wendy Pavy's joined us. Tyson from way up north. Olga, Sarah, g'day. Miriam, Linda, Lyle, Lessa, John Broadbent, James Staples, James Brown. I love a man called James Brown. Fantastic.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for giving us your time today, folks. We're going to dive right in because that's what we do. We've only got an hour and we're kind of consciously aware that this is probably your lunch break as well, or something along those lines. So let's get our Zoom 2022 on, Tracy, Sheen, and we'll talk a little bit about what it is we're going to be doing. So look, of course, thank you so much for coming on, giving us your time. We know that you know how to use Zoom, right? And I think some people may have misinterpreted even the idea of this, but what we're hoping to do is to show you some ways to really use Zoom. And I'll tell you, Tracy and I have just been doing a bit of behind the scenes stuff, getting ready for this. And there is so much stuff on there that the average person, we know how to press start call now and end. And yet there's all this other stuff that is just somewhere hidden away that we've got to figure out. Tracy, tell everyone a little who doesn't know you, tell everyone what you do.
Sure. Thanks, folks. And James, you're in the right room. James just said NFI actually with Zoom. So you're in the right place, mate.
You got here. We're taking that as a victory.
Exactly. You clicked the link, you got here. So, folks, I'm the author of The End of Technophobia, Australia's Business Book of the Year for 2021. I'm known as the Digital Guide. And essentially what I do is help small business owners and people just like you maximize and get the most out of technology in their business.
Nice. Thank you. So the Digital Guide, I'm just that loud guy who does webinars. I write books. I think most of you guys know me and what it is I do, but I'm the entrepreneurial futurist. So I help people of substance to build businesses of substance. All right, let's get going. One thing I am going to say is Tracy is doing a 2-hour masterclass on Thursday, the 23rd of June. 10 a.m. Queensland time. What time is that in Hobart, Tracy? That's the only thing.
10 a.m. at this time of the year.
We'll send you a link through and information about that as well. But if you want to know more about Zoom, that's obviously going to be a place where you're going to be able to go and do that and find out more. And we'll talk a little bit more about it towards the end of the webinar as well. So how's it going to work? Well, okay, that was our first stumbling block, actually, going, okay, do we do it all? Do we go behind the scenes? Do we do this? What are we doing here? Well, we're going to do a bit of a mixture. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the higher, some thinking, some ideas, some strategies, but we're also going to dive under the hood and have a look. And Tracy is actually fabulous at kind of getting into the back end of Zoom and running through things like settings and all these, little things that who the heck knows about. So we're going to bounce around a bit. There'll be me sharing screen, Tracy sharing screen. Feel free to ask questions as we're moving along, but I think you're going to get a lot of really good tips out of this as we're moving through. So I think I kind of realized you could probably do like an 8-hour class on this as well, and we probably would barely scratch the surface, but hopefully we'll be able to give you enough meaty stuff to take home. We're going to look at Zoom from 3 different angles. It's going to be like user tips is what it is, tech tips, and then live tips, which is just kind of cool way of talking about what it is that I just said. Okay, so we'll start off with the general Zoom stuff as a technical category for all of us. Now, and I'm sure that some of you are going to know some of the tips that we're sharing. Others, this is going to be like discovering chocolate for the first time in there. So I'm going to start off with the first, and this is something that I found a long time ago out of necessity more than anything else. This one is in the settings, and Tracy will take us there before. But if you haven't found the Touch Up My Appearance panel on Zoom, then you really are missing out. Like the difference that it's made. When I first found it, probably 18 months, 2 years ago, I have to say, I signed a pact in blood with Lolita, my other half, to say that we can't tell anyone. You know, like this is one where you need to look better than anyone else on the call. How shallow and bloody, wrong is that? But if you haven't used it, the Touch Up My Appearance one really does make you, smooth out the ragged bits in there. I don't do the adjust for low light kind of setting in there. Do you use that, Tracy?
Yeah, well, it depends on the time of the day that I'm doing the call. So if it's an evening where I don't have as much natural light coming in from the side, then yes, I do, because it makes a difference. One of the things, folks, have a giggle when you see my settings, the difference in the setting of the touch-up appearance between where Andrew's got the bar and where I've got the bar. That's the first significant difference.
Right, yours is as far right as it can go. But we'll go into that in a second. The second thing, this has nothing to do with Zoom. This is just one of those things that people don't do. The number of times I say, "Someone, what's wrong with your camera?" People don't know to clean the lens. Now, this might sound ridiculous. Every morning, because I spend all day long on Zoom, I have these little lens cleaners that I buy by a box of 600. I clean my computer camera every morning just to make sure that it's there. And if you're around people that touch computer screens, those people, for some reason, their grubby little mitts always end up, over that. So please do that. The third thing that I wanted to share in this is learn how to use Zoom. The number of people who I talk to, and that's where they sit. They're like Dickie Nee of Saturday Night Live. For any of us who refer, Tracy, behave, okay? Position yourself in the screen so that you're in the right spot, okay? It is the simplest of things, but if you look at 5 people in a row, one will always be like they're 6, sitting. If that's the CEO of the company, how can you take them seriously, right? If you just cannot kind of do that. Position yourself beforehand, okay? So touch up appearance on maximum, clean the freaking doohickey, and make sure that you're positioned in the middle and at the right kind of a level. Okay, that's more cathartic for me than anything else. I just had to get that off my chest, to understand that. I'd probably add one more, is to know where the camera is so that you can look at it, so you can actually make eye contact with people. I used to put a post-it note. Has anyone got one of those little things you put over the top of it, which says, "Look here," so that you're doing it? Because otherwise we're looking over here. Tracy and I are on my little screen are over there, and it's a bit distracting for people. Very, very simple little points there. Yes, Lauren, you've got to have a clean doohickey. That's exactly the technical term. Okay, now let's stop this. Tracy, let you log in. I'm going to stop sharing. You go under the hood, and you're going to run through a few bits and pieces with us that are a little bit more technical than my, wipes.
Than the doohickeys. We're moving on from the doohickeys. And folks, if you're watching on Facebook, welcome. Please know we can't monitor comments on Facebook. So if you have something, feel free to pop it in the chat on Facebook, and Andrew and I will take a look at it when we're done and get back to you if we don't answer the questions along the way, but I'm pretty confident we will. So first things first, here's the settings tab that Andrew was just talking about with the Touch Up My Appearance. So I'm just going to show you where that is here. And if you can see, look, my touch-up appearance is about as far on the Richter scale as we can get there. A couple of other things to realize: if you are an author or someone that has their book or another device behind you, shameless self-promotion, please make sure that you don't tick the mirror my video. Now, if you notice, if I tick that, it's going to move my book from one side to the other, and it's going to make the writing go back to front. So really don't want that to happen. So that's just a little trick that I often see people with the things around the wrong way there. So with your audio, I often find that people are saying to me, "Oh, I can't, my mic's not working properly, or I'm not getting the sound, or I'm not getting any of this through." So there's a couple of ways that you can get to these settings. You can either go to where your microphone is showing on your Zoom screen, where you would normally mute yourself. There'll be a little arrow up beside to the right of the microphone. If you click on that and go to audio settings, it'll bring this up for you. And this is where you can test or change a speaker. So if you can see at the moment, my speaker's coming through my iMac. I've got the option of changing that to the microphone, which I shall not do. And I can test my speaker. So if you're not getting sound at any point through a meeting, a webinar, or anything like that, first thing to do is go into your audio settings and check your speaker and just make sure. So that often happens if you're wearing headsets or Bluetooth headsets, things like that. Your microphone, as you can see, I have this automatically adjusted so I don't max my volume out, because I have a tendency to get a little excited and perhaps raise my voice, raise my tonality. So I automatically adjust that to keep that within range so it doesn't boom to people when I'm talking. But again, you can also change your mic to another setting. So often, Andrew, and this is something you and I were chatting about yesterday, often people go to the expense of buying a really nice mic, but then their sound's rubbish because they haven't gone in and changed the setting here to make sure that they're using their super impressive mic.
Can I ask a question there? Sorry,
yeah.
Tracy. Just that, do you use a suppressing the background noise? I mean, obviously you've got it set on auto there. Is that better than actually, like, you know, the high suppression there of a dog barking in the background or something like that? I mean, I've never really played around with those settings, you know, but sometimes
it does work.
In co-working spaces and things like that, you can have quite a lot of background noise on, right? So
yeah. So I'll check that. So I also run a second app called Crisp, KRISP, which is a free download if you want to check it out. And I'm happy to provide a link for that so you can have a look at it. But if you have, you know, the chainsaw that always starts, or the
leaf blower,
the lawnmower, the leaf blower, the et cetera, if you come in there and click high, it does get rid of a lot of it. So that's a cracking one, and that's only come in probably the last 6 months. So that's a really good one to check out there. The other one, before I bounce back to you, Andrew, I'm just going to close this one down, that I haven't seen a lot of people do. If you have a paid version of Zoom, and you'll know because your private meetings can run longer than 40 minutes, or perhaps you run webinars and things, you can set up your own personal meeting number. Now, you can set that to be your private room. So anytime you set up a meeting room, and Andrew and I are going to talk about meetings in a moment, but I've set that, if you can see that, if anyone knows, that's basically my mobile number. So it just makes it really easy for me to remember what my Zoom meeting ID room is. So if anyone knows, says to me, you know, where are we meeting? I can just rattle off, you know, my mobile number, drop the 0 at the front, and that's my meeting ID for Zoom. So that's another really handy one that often people don't think to set up. I'm going to stop sharing, Andrew, and we'll go back to you in the studio.
Nice. Okay, great. Very, very interesting. And one of the things that we'll kind of mention a few times is because Zoom changes a lot. And I don't know about you, but you get an update, you update it, none of us read all of the stuff that's changed. It's only through going through this every once in a while, you know, you ask Tracy, she reads everything. And so who knew about the noise suppression, the music suppression, or you know, the maximizing it, so maximizing quality, etc. Right? And I'm on Zoom 6 to 8 hours a day, basically, you know, most of the time. And because we're busy using it, we're not busy diving into going, how do we make it better? That noise suppression, I'm in a co-working facility with a private office, but they stream a bit of music through, and it's just enough that it can kind of come through if it's, you know, if I'm a grumpy old man and they're playing loud music, you know. But now I know straight away I can actually suppress the background noise a little bit more. Fantastic little kind of tool there. And
the real difference between that and Crisp, like why would you go to the other app that I mentioned, Crisp, is Crisp will suppress the noise from the person you're speaking to as well. Don't ask me how it does it. It's the magic. But if Andrew's got a leaf blower going and I'm running Crisp, it'll suppress the noise in his background as well.
Yeah, great. Really, really, really helpful. Okay, we want to talk about meetings, Zoom meetings. I'm assuming that everyone on the call uses Zoom meetings, you know, in one shape or form as well. Really interesting. Now, again, Tracy and I were talking about this yesterday, and it reveals some fairly scary personality traits about her, which we will get to in a second. But the question was, how do you use your private meeting room? So for me, I use my private meeting room for everything. So all of my coaching clients have my private meeting room, and they literally, the first thing I do on a coaching call is get them to bookmark it and put in Andrew's meeting room. So whenever we're doing a call, whenever we're connecting, it's always the same link, right? So that's how I use a private room. Now, if someone drops in, as they can do, they still can't get in because I've got to let them in, so it's not like someone can, Putin can't just drop in and start, interrupting the meeting or anything like that. But I do that because I found it kind of convenient. But I was interested, Tracy, that you use the private meeting room in a far more paranoid way. Tell me about how you use it.
Totally paranoid way. I don't use my private meeting room unless I'm catching up with someone really quickly. So if it's an off the cuff thing that, you've messaged me, Andrew, and said, I've got an issue with something, can we jump in? Then I'll just go, yep, jump into my private meeting room. But if I'm scheduling something with someone, I will schedule a different meeting ID each time. And I'll often set up. So in that coaching instance, when I'm coaching people, when I'm working with my people one-on-one, I set up recurring meetings. So we agree to a schedule once a month, once a fortnight, whatever that is, and they can use the same link. It's just not my personal ID.
Okay. So why don't you use your meeting room the way that I do? Not saying right or wrong. I'm just interested in why you don't.
Yeah, it's just that added layer of security. So I guess I started this prior to the waiting room thing coming in. So it's just a habit I've gotten into, because prior to, and what was that, 2020, 2021, that Zoom set up, you had to choose between, do you want a passcode or a waiting room? Mm-hmm. And you had to default to one of those. So before that, if I was using my private meeting room, I did this to Andrew. Andrew was on a coaching call with someone, and I was looking for a recording of something and clicked on something, and I bounced into his room in the middle of a coaching session with someone, and I'm looking around looking for, where do I close recording, and isn't that weird? And he's going, get out of the damn room. So it was just, I was using that format way before it moved into the waiting room versus the passcode. So I just kept it going.
Nice. Okay. So again, a bit of a technique, personal preference, whatever it might look like, that's up to you as well. The next tip about usage here, and you can use this in meeting rooms, you can use this, I believe, in webinars as well. This is a timer, and this is an app, and Tracy's going to talk more about apps in a few minutes. But this is a really cool little thing, right? In terms of, I can have it so that it's just up on my screen, literally like this screenshot is, where I'm doing a countdown, because you know what it's like. It's all well and true to say, well, I can look up in the corner here and see what the time is. But that's very different to having a countdown timer, which is saying, hey, I've got 4 minutes, 30 seconds, etc. It's very, very helpful for you when you're trying to stay on time for a presentation in some shape or form. Very easy to use. Of course, you can also have it on everyone else's screen or someone else's screen as well. And Tracy, you used a great example yesterday about if you're throwing to someone and they've got 3 minutes, about, you can have that come up then that they've got 3 minutes, which is on their screen. It's very obvious. Sometimes when you're doing an exercise in a meeting room and you're throwing it to people and you say you've got 3 minutes, but people will talk for 25 minutes. This is a really nice way of just managing time really well.
And it does ring a little bell, which I liked. I didn't realize it did that until I was playing with it this week, actually, in a coaching environment or networking environment, and everybody had, a couple of minutes to do their pitch. And as they were coming on time, the moment it went to 0, they got a little bell, and I didn't need to do anything. It wasn't someone tapping their watch. It just shows up on the screen, and it pulled everybody back into line.
Miriam, we're going to show you where to find this in a minute, but it was just, these are a bit operationally kind of, or I don't know, technique-y stuff that I do, because Tracy does the tech stuff. I do the glory stuff at the beginning, right? The third thing that I wanted to talk about here is breakout rooms. Now, I'm intrigued. How many of you are actually using breakout rooms at the moment, or You know, like, can you just drop a comment for us in the chat box? They are fabulous tools, and a lot of people aren't. So Tyson, is that you've never used one or ever used one? Yeah, I don't know how to use breakout rooms, Sarah, but I've participated in them. Great. Never. Olga, yes. Love okay. Actually, so most of you are using them. Amy, haven't used them yet, but I've been on plenty. Right. Love them. So you know, quite a few of you are using them. I think for me, it took a bit to use them first off because I'm trying to use breakout rooms on webinars, and then I find out, well, you can't use breakout rooms on webinars. You can only use them in meetings. So, you know, I don't really understand what that's all about. But anyway, that's obviously something under the hood. But I did a training session for a fairly large organization, and I had a few hundred people on this training session, and we used breakout rooms over a 4-hour period. And it was really, really fabulous. And the thing that I found easy to set it up was actually really easy. So if you haven't done them yourself, it's really easy to set up breakout rooms. And we can have a look at that. It was also nice that when people, how they pick their room is relatively easy as well. And I think you're going to talk that through, Tracy. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. We'll share a little about that. Yeah.
Great. And you know, you can broadcast messages into the rooms. You can dip into the room, you know, and see what's happening in there. Go and be a voyeur, and then kind of dip back out. They really add a level of engagement, whether it's a small group or a large group. You know, I had 4 rooms of 50 people that were all kind of workshopping, and you know, it's a fantastic tool. So my advice is, if you haven't used them because it's like, oh, it's tech and it's a bit scary, either talk to Tracy or just get half a dozen people together and say, hey, can I just practice, do a breakout room session and try it on you, and just set up a couple.
And that's all I did, Andrew. Like when these first came out, I put a call out to a couple of mates and said, listen, we're overdue for a Friday Arvo catch up. Let's have a wine. Got them all online, and then went, now I want to play with breakout rooms. So lull them into a false sense of security. But then we all kind of went, hey, that's a cool idea. So we all kind of then got familiar with how they worked.
Yeah. And Sarah, the answer to your question is yes. You know, the host, you can actually go. So I had these 4 rooms with 50 people in each room, and I could drop in and out. And literally, I'm then, you know, on video, I'm like it's a normal call. I'm a part of it. I can add comment, and then I can pull back out. And I could drive the panel by saying, hey, guys, 5 minutes to go, broadcast into each room or broadcast it into one room.
And there, another nice thing, if you have, say you're doing a training scenario like Andrew was talking about, if you've got co-hosts or co-trainers, you can allocate them to jump in and out of rooms as well. So, you know, then you can set a trainer. If you've got four rooms of 50 people, you can have 2 or 3 people bumping around and just dropping in and checking out.
Because the other thing is, I'm not sure that everyone is using breakout rooms as well as we all probably could. You know, like the thing is that you've got to have a little bit of planning, right? Like theoretically, depending on what's happening, you've got to allocate someone in the room to be managing the room. You know, if there's 4 groups and they're working on stuff. You know, there's more and more apps that are getting made now, so you can like share a whiteboard across, you know, all of the breakout rooms. There's more stuff happening that you can use it. Amy, you've just got to be in meetings to be able to use a breakout room, and there's a little kind of bar, which again we can kind of talk a bit about setting that up in a second. But you can do it so that you can have a list of people that all get allocated. You might have 2 rooms, and those people go in there, or you can set up 4 rooms with a name. So it's Andrew, Tracy, Mary, and Sarah, and you tell them, okay, so those of you pick your rooms. There's Tracy's rooms, you know who you are. There's Mary, you go there. You know, people can self-nominate, or it can automatically just split them up, you know, randomly, so that 50 go into each room. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Great repertoire for those doing bigger meetings, I think, as well, that you want to have a bit more engagement. Just got to kind of think it through a little bit more.
So we used rooms really successfully. I did a piece of work for one of the government departments last year where they were workshopping. I don't know, it was, I do know what it was. It was around a mental health plan. And we'd set up 4 different rooms. So one was governance, one was communication, one was, I can't remember now, but everybody needed to jump into each of the rooms during the course of the day and add their thoughts to the whiteboard and have a discussion around those particular pieces of work that needed to happen, right? So we had the main room open, which is kind of like the webinar room, right? Your main room. But during the session, people could just jump in and out of the different breakout rooms as they were thinking about, oh, okay, well, that's the governance piece. I want to go in and add something to that. And we just had people stationed in those breakout rooms to, as they would call it, hold the space to allow people to come in and have the conversation about. So there's a lot of really cool ways when you start thinking about, you know, how we used to train in a face-to-face environment where we go, okay, we're going to, you know, your group is going off to that little area, that group's going off to the cafe, and then we're going to get back together. It's exactly the same thing. It's just in virtual land. It's fantastic.
Love that. Love that. Okay. How are we going, folks? Give us a little bit of feedback before we go under the hood again. Tracy's going to talk about breakout rooms, apps, and things like that. Is this valuable so far? Just to, you know, are we on the mark? Great. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you,
Amy's yelling at us. She's that excited.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. Yeah, good. There's so much stuff. Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Tyson. Thanks, James. Really valuable. Wendy, you know what we're like, Wendy. Nice that you're here. You've got to have a few laughs. We're being on our best behavior.
I know. I can't keep him serious, Wendy. He's doing well, isn't he?
All right, come on, under the hood, Tracy.
All right, here we go. Okay, so I am in my overall settings. So you get to this by logging in via your web link, right? Not your desktop app. You've got to come in via the web link is the big thing. So if we're looking at meetings in general and we want to talk breakout rooms specifically, if I go to schedule a meeting, I fill in all my usual stuff. Now, first of all, here's where you tick recurring meetings. So if you want to get paranoid like me and use a different link to your private link, and you have a regular occurrence, your regular cadence of coaching or whatever that looks like, you can set that up to daily, weekly, custom, whatever that looks like for you. It can be a number of occurrences. It can be, it repeats every, you know, 3rd day on the first week of the month or whatever that looks like. So I love recurring meetings for that reason.
Good idea.
We're going to talk about templates, so we'll get back to that in a moment. But if you can see, let me just pop in some details here. I can move to the next session. AG and Tracy catch up. So now I'm going to go save. And now when this is set up, so this would be now that I can send the link to Andrew and say, here's when we're catching up. But if you look across the bottom here, here's where I start to get into the various bits and pieces around polls, around breakout rooms, etc. Now, I think because I've done an update overnight, look at what has happened to me, Andrew. I have lost my breakout rooms. Don't you love it when that happens? So I'm going to go into my settings. And all I'm doing, folks, is just jumping into my settings and looking for...
You've got to turn on breakout
meeting
rooms.
settings. And the first thing you need to know is you've got to switch on breakout rooms or it's not going to appear. So... Andrew, while I'm here, should we take a couple of minutes and just go through the
I was
settings?
just going to say, so we went through that pretty quickly, but for breakout rooms, but can everyone find their way to account settings? It's just an important one because this is that long page that's got some really kind of cool things in it. We ran through this last night kind of going, and I'm going, well, I didn't know that was in there. I didn't know that was in there. So we're kind of assuming you're going to be able to get to here again from the browser, not from the app. That was a great point that you made there. You may as well, while we're in here, Tracy, kind of keep going. We've gone down the rabbit hole. Let's keep going.
Let's keep going. All right. So, and this is going to be pretty quick, folks. So, play along at home. But the first thing to know, it's under account management and then account settings from your web browser. So what we're doing is, if you can see on this side here, we go from security to schedule meeting, in meeting basic, advanced, yada, yada, yada. As you scroll down the page, it just drops into the next thing. So it's one big, long scrolling thing. But you'll see here, this is where you switch on. Do you want passcodes? Do you want to change how your passcode shows up? Do you want to let people authenticate themselves? Do you want, whatever that security bit looks like? And I'm being a little bit blasé, but please do spend the time in the security, because that is really important to make sure that you've got that set up the way that is going to work best for your business. So here we are in the schedule meetings, and I'm just going to scroll down. We talked about the watermark yesterday, Andrew, and that's really cool. So where I see value with adding a watermark is if you were doing work into, say, a corporate environment and you had some IP associated with what you were sharing, and you were, had some concerns around how that work was perhaps going to be used, you can actually upload your logo and share it as a watermark across the screen the whole time. And you just set the, how opaque that is. And it just sits there the whole time. So then, from an IP point of view, you've got that. So here we go. If anyone's got any questions about any of the settings as I'm just kind of scrolling through, just pop it into the chat. A nice one here is your tracking pixel. So if you're someone who likes to collect data via Facebook or via, any of the other things, you can grab a pixel and just start to know where people are registering from and what that looks like. Your meeting reminders, and here we go. So now we've got chat, we're into private. Here's another part where Andrew and I differ in terms of paranoia levels. So I guess because I run a lot of my meetings are with government departments that I co-host and things like that for them, they don't like having private chats going on. So if you can see, we've got 20 odd people in the room now. I don't want Amy being able to message Jeff and go, oh my God, can you have a look at Andrew's backdrop? It's wobbling in the breeze, whatever that looks like. So you can switch that on and off to make sure that people can't be having those conversations. I'm not going to stop them texting each other, but at least they can't do it in Zoom. If it's important that you collect the chat information, that's where you switch that on.
Hey,
so
Tracy,
often that has to go with the report. Sorry,
we might just slow it down a tad,
yeah.
if we can. Just a question there from Michelle. I don't know if you know the answer to that as well, but watermark is a great feature. Do you know if you can use that with webinars?
Yes.
You can. Great.
Yes,
awesome.
You can. Yeah.
Okay, great.
And that is a handy one. And Wendy, yes, I could see you using that. So again, it's just a matter of kind of going through all of this. So meetings, polls, breakout rooms that we're coming to, you need to switch them on or they're not going to. So you're going to start a meeting. So Amy, if you've never run a breakout room yourself, you're going to start a meeting and then you go, I don't have breakout rooms, I don't have polls. Come into your settings, in meeting basics, scroll down to you see your meetings and polls, toggle that on. Another one, and Andrew, I know we're going to get to polls, so you need to make sure you've ticked the advanced section as well, and we'll talk about why that's important in a minute. Surveys can often be something that people want to run at the end. So just know that you can have a survey feature that can roll out at the end of a meeting or a webinar. And where else are we going? Screen sharing, you can switch that off and on. Annotation, whiteboards, we're going to talk a little bit about whiteboards. Meeting reactions, I think it's important to allow everybody to have a full range of emojis. Andrew, do you agree? As opposed to just
I agree. Selected emojis just feels too censorish.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
What's that there? Just go up a little bit. There's gesture recognition. So you've got allow users to activate the following emojis based on hand gesture.
Oh, okay. So this is really cool. This only works on some tablets. So Pete, my hubby, for those of you who know him, runs an iPad. He can just do that on his iPad and it will raise the hand on Zoom. It recognizes that that's the gesture. And, you know, so if he does that, it gives a thumbs up on the screen. If he does that, it raises his hand. So that's the gesture recognition. It's only available on certain devices, but really cool. It annoys me that he gets some of the cooler features and I don't. So again, this is just something we don't spend a lot of time in here, and there's some really cool features, you know, that is worth looking at. So here we go, breakout rooms. It is toggled on, so not sure why it wasn't showing in there. So I'll bring you into one of my pre-scheduled meetings so you can have a look. And here's
do you know what I find, Tracy, with that is sometimes I'll go in there and find that it's on, but it's not. I've got to go in, turn it off, and turn it on again.
Toggle it off and turn it on. That's
I
the old
know,
IT thing, isn't it?
I know. It seems so low tech, but I had that with breakout rooms where they weren't coming up, and it was on, and I just turned it off, turned it on, and it seemed to work. Remembering too, folks, sometimes with these updates, is what Tracy was talking about, there's always new features, and there are sometimes gremlins in the system where stuff that you might have been using all of a sudden hasn't been using. So you know how we do an update and we don't really think anything more about it. We just go on and do our meeting or our webinar. It's great to check your settings. Sometimes I've been caught where I've done an update and it cancelled a webinar that I had, you know, in the system. So I just kind of make sure that things are there. I know that sounds a little bit paranoid, but it just, yeah, I don't know, things can change.
And Jeff's just said there, it keeps turning off automatic recording, but after 3 or 4 meetings, it turns itself back on. Any thoughts? The one thing I would check, Jeff, would be what internet browser do you use? Because Andrew and I had this conversation yesterday about he wanted to live stream like we are today to YouTube, to Facebook. And it wasn't working for him. And I said, what browser do you use? And he said, Firefox. And I said, then you've got to use Chrome, because a lot of the times, particularly Firefox and Safari, they tend to have a higher security level than Chrome. So all we did was we went in, we copied the URL, shut down Firefox, opened up Chrome, dumped the URL in, and voila, it was working. So the first thing I would say is, what is your user edge? I'd try using a different default browser, but that's probably the thing, is that it's glitching out with the browser. So yes, here are the breakout rooms. So you can see there's a couple of things here that are worth looking at. And Andrew, we were talking about this bottom one, so I left this switched off so we could talk it through. Allow hosts to assign participants when scheduling. So that means you're live, you've got 20 odd people in the room, and you suddenly decide it's a good idea to run a breakout room. You hit breakout room, and you either set them up in the moment or allow people to choose randomly. So that's happening while that's going on. Allow hosts to broadcast message to participants. You definitely want to have that one ticked on. That just means you can send a message to say 5 minutes to go, and it will broadcast that message to all of the rooms. And then Andrew, do you want to talk through, because
Sure.
This is a new one that we were both went, oh, that's new.
Well, I think it's just a nice, simple one. I haven't used it yet, but I love the idea about that, allowing you to, to see what's happening in the breakout rooms. So I saw a video of it last night. I was just kind of researching a little bit. It's actually pretty cool. You can kind of get a bit of a view of the the engagement in the room. You might want to drop back into a room and be able to kind of see there's no reactions. There's not a lot of screen sharing happening, because I found when I move from room to room without having that, you kind of don't know what you're kind of arriving to, and it can be that people are sitting around and not actually that engaged and all the rest of it. So I think it's one of those tools that I'd like to do and I'd like to try, and just kind of see what it kind of works like. But I would definitely use it it's just another tool in our little kind of toolkit of engagement.
Yeah, 100%. And it is interesting to know, and I left that switched off so you could see what it looks like when I tick it on. That just means that that's a really new feature. So if people are working with older versions of Zoom, so maybe they've not done the latest update or, whatever that looks like, you may not see that for participants that are using the older version. So just bear that in mind. Remote support, I love that one as somebody who gets paid by various departments and things to sit in and act as Zoom support. I always say to people, make sure that you have that switched on. That just lets me get in and play around with the back end of their settings if I need to. Captions and auto captions, they can be really handy again from an accessibility point of view. Sorry, Andrew.
I was just going to say, Lauren, you just asked a question there about is there a feature to help remind people that a meeting is about to start? I resend the meeting confirmation, but wonder if there's another way to do it. I mean, all I do is make sure that I tick in meetings and webinars that there's the 3 emails that are sent out. You know,
there's
like
nothing more than that.
That's like a week before,
and a day
24
before,
hours before, and an hour before. Do you use that, Lauren, when you're setting them up? You know, as opposed to there isn't it's starting in 5 minutes. It's in the setup that you've got to kind of do the reminders. It's an email one. I send reminders via Calendly. Zoom can actually send out the reminder, for you. So it's in the settings. We might go to that in a second just to show you, because it's actually a little bit tricky to find it.
Yeah. So I'm watching. I've got an eye on the time, and I don't have my timer going, but I've got an eye on the time, and I know we're not going to have time to get right through the settings. So the other question in there that I'll jump across to is the apps. So if you Google Zoom apps now, you'll see it'll bring you up a marketplace, and you can search through and look for the apps that you like the look of. Couple of tips. If you're looking for an app that's going to work in a meeting or a webinar, just make sure that you tick, what it is you're actually looking for, and that'll just narrow down the amount of apps available for webinars or meetings, etc. And the other one is I like to go for the Zoom approved apps. It is an open marketplace, and I am mindful that potentially the security of Zoom is not as great as some of the other virtual platforms out there. So I'm always looking for what apps have been approved by Zoom for me to use. And there's some great apps. So there's that timer app. I think it was Michelle that was asking about that.
Miriam, I think.
Miriam, timer, Google, etc.
It would be good right now to turn on that noise suppression to see if it stops Obi and Lando from coming in the background.
It's my little next door neighbour's dog, Gracie. So let me go into my audio settings.
Well, Gracie's stopped now.
Tracy has stopped now.
So you let us know if you hear her barking, and then we'll let you know if we can hear it.
Okay, I will.
Sorry. So
let me hit stop share and let me come back. So she's barking again now.
No, we can still hear her. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I can hear it still. So, all right, Zoom, that's a failure. That one didn't work. Tracy, could you just go into meetings and set up a meeting and just do the reminder, just to show, I think, Lauren, about the email reminder?
Yeah, of course.
You were going to do something else in the meetings, I think, weren't you?
Probably.
Yeah, Gracie does want to join in.
Okay, so let me go into one that I've already set up.
So,
okay, so this is interesting. The breakout rooms still aren't showing, so I'm going to have to reboot my Zoom. Templates was something we were going to talk about. So in meetings and in webinars. So I don't know if you saw, let me go back out and back into Andrew's. You can set up meeting templates. So if it's a recurring kind of thing that you don't want to set up a recurring meeting, but the information is the same. So perhaps it's a coaching format, or I don't know, let's stick with coaching format. You can choose from, so if you see, once I've written out all of the information, and you need to do this first. So you saw when I was setting up the topic, there was an opportunity there to write a description, etc. Once I've written all of that out and I've saved it, so it's there ready to rock and roll as a meeting, I can now go save as template, and I can call that template, coaching catch up. and hit save template. Now, the next time I want to schedule a meeting for a new coaching client, I can just go back to meetings, schedule a meeting. And now when I go to write everything in, the first thing I'm going to do is come down to template and select my template as coaching catch up, and it would insert all of the descriptions, everything else that I had pre-written. And then all I need to do is change the day and time, etc., to fit me. So that kind of saves a lot of rewriting that same content when you're after the same stuff over and over and over again. Options here.
This is again another really kind of good example of if you take the time to kind of explore a bit of Zoom, you can actually save yourself quite a lot of time as well on that side of it. So just the email alert side of things.
Alert. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even in webinar, meeting, whatever it is. Just
so I'll look at it in webinars because I know I've got that set up in webinars. So.
And this is the little nav thing, which can be kind of funny in email settings. I think it normally is, right?
Yeah.
Where you go into there and then.
So the first thing you can do is change your email contact. So if you've set that up under Andrew Griffiths, but you don't want people emailing Andrew Griffiths, you can change that to info. So it goes to your admin person. So that's the first thing I would always say, check out. Invitation email to panelists. This is the same in meetings. You do have the ability to alter what is written. So you can change that text if you want to, so you can make it a little bit more personal. But here's where you set up your reminders. So no reminders, follow-up reminders, etc. So here's where you just tick the I want one a week, a day, and an hour before, and you just hit save. Now, if you want anything closer to the time, we're kicking off in 5 minutes, that would be where you would need to copy the link and pop it into your own email scheduling tool and send it out from there.
It's kind of handy. Again, I think probably most of us are using it, but for those who aren't, the nice thing about it is that it has the link and everything in the reminder. You know, so it's just that nice little 1 hour. The 1 hour before one is interesting because I think it's often people go, oh my God, I've got they've forgotten about it because it hasn't ended up in their calendar or whatever. Mm-hmm. So
you're right, Lauren, it's not a global setting, it's individual, because I think they assume that, there's some webinars and some meetings I set up where I know people don't need the reminder, but there's particularly webinars I will set that up each time. So
does it work the same for meetings as for webinars, the email reminder? I'm not actually sure, does it? I'm not sure that you've got that same setting option in meetings, actually. I know it does for webinars.
In webinars, definitely. Let's have a look in
because I don't think
meetings.
Not seeing the options only for registered.
So if I look down the bottom, I don't have an option to send a reminder
under edit?
For a meeting. So edit just edits the entire meeting.
Yeah.
So edit allows you to then change the description or move the date around or do anything like that, but not send an email reminder. So all I do with my meeting reminders, because I do a lot in meetings as opposed to webinars because I want the face-to-face interaction, is I'll again grab the link and throw it into my email system to set the reminder the week out, the day out, the hour out.
Okay. How's that for a whole?
It's a lot, right? It's a lot to be taking in.
But if you use the reminders, great. That's the key. Zoom webinar stuff in the last 10 minutes or so, what we're going through. One of the things that I would actually be saying is, are you using the practice session, in your Zoom webinars? This is such a great setting. I'm going to assume that most of you are, but some of you probably aren't. Can you let me know who uses the practice session? Who's never heard of it? Who wants to know if they're on the right webinar? Just in the chat box again. Great.
So Michelle uses it.
Okay, so Wendy, you didn't know about it. Okay, interesting. No, Amy, great. Never heard of it, Sarah. Okay, great. That's really, James, awesome.
I love James' standard response. You're in the right room, James.
So very, very simply, when you're setting up a new webinar, and again, I can probably just duck into this. I'll take over your role here, Tracy. you know.
Wow. Okay. I'll go grab a coffee.
And, or try to, where am I? I'll share my screen now.
I'm in there if you want me to just flick in.
Oh, that's all right. I'm kind of makes me feel like I've got some value and purpose now to do this. Schedule a webinar. Will it let me schedule one while I'm doing one? Yes, it will.
Yeah.
Quite simply, again, okay, webinar enable. So when we get down to the bottom of the page a little bit here, it just enable the practice session. You know, so when you do that, it'll let you flow. I don't tend to have Q&A on. I just use chat box just on passing. That's another preference. But what the practice session is and why it's so valuable, folks, is quite simply because it's literally like this, but it has a bar across the top which says practice session. You can do everything that you would do on the webinar in a practice session. And it's really good. Like this webinar, obviously you can tell we're diving in and out of, we're going, you know, screen sharing, going live. To not kind of have some kind of practice of this would make it really kind of messy. It would be very hard, you know, well, apart from the last bit where I went rogue. But you know, if you, you know, it's so to do a briefing, if I've got someone coming on the call, you know, this is where we do it. You know, we kind of do it in a practice session. How's it going to flow? Like how's that going to work? It's a very, very cool kind of feature. So, you know, I'd kind of encourage you to be, you know, to be using it. I think that it's just a really cool little feature that, again, people don't necessarily use a great deal.
And of course, the other big thing with practice sessions is the difference between meetings and webinars, right? As soon as you click go live with the webinar, people start popping in. So if you're still there chatting through, now how's this going to run, and you're going to go live and I'm going to you've got people sitting there listening to that, as opposed to a meeting where they're in the waiting room and you can choose to let them in. If you're in a practice session, they can be sitting there waiting for the webinar to start, but they're not seeing you go through that final kind of rundown.
Yeah, and of course, the reason then is also that, you know, if you're setting up and you're sharing on Facebook, like we're live streaming on Facebook, we've got there's two of us, there's a fair bit kind of going on, you know, to be honest. So you want to get that all happening, record, and then press start the webinar. If you just go live on the webinar, you spend the first couple of minutes going, okay, where do I do that? How do I do this? Like, you know, blah, 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 blah. You know, it's really kind of, you know, it's really complicated to move that around. Tyson,
Andrew, I was going to say, Tyson's just asked about chat versus Q&A.
It's a really great kind of question. It comes back to that same point. Generally, when I'm doing a webinar, mate, it's just me, right? You know, probably like yourself, we don't have a support team kind of monitoring all the questions, which I hate anyway. I just find I push everyone into chat because I've always got one eye on chat whenever I'm in a webinar. If I've got Q&A, what I'm kind of doing is I've got to kind of look at something else, and I just find it just takes my eye off the ball, and I actually forget the questions, ones that because I'm focused on the chat. So it's purely a management thing for me more than anything else, to be really honest.
The other thing from my point of view is it depends on how technical your audience are. Just by removing that other option for them, it saves confusion of where do I and what do I and should I be, and
it's money for confusion for me. I think that we're trying to remove here, Tracy.
I was trying to help you out, Andrew.
Thank you for being nice. The last couple of things to go through here are like polls. Like, are you using polls? Polls are great. Like, honestly, polls, another really cool kind of you know, resource as well. Simple to use, but you know, again, set up a dummy webinar, set up a dummy meeting, and just, you know, the best thing to do is to go in there and use them. You know, like, you know, I set up a poll. I got a question: do you use polls in your presentations? Let's launch it. You know, kind of see what happens. Now, I don't know that you can necessarily see this, but the live poll tells us who's responded, you know, etc. And so I kind of get that. Now, you can use polls in meetings as well, I believe. Is that right?
You can. Yes. Yes.
So, you know, I can end that and go, okay, so now we've had most of you have answered. What time do we finish? That was me. I can end the poll and then it'll say share the results, right? So now you can see the results. Everyone can see what the results were. Yep, nice, easy. Like to set it up is just an easy kind of thing to do.
And the advanced polls are awesome because the advanced polls give you multiple choice and things as well. So have a play around with them. They're really cool.
Yeah, I do. I just think it's an interesting one. You can really address the big issues here as well. I think it's important, that we kind of, focus on the bigger issues around this. So, we need to, not that I'm competitive in any way. Did I prepare that poll earlier? I did. You do prepare them earlier, Sarah, without a doubt. It's important that you think about the questions and also just from a usability point of view or engagement point of view, polls are just kind of nice to, like obviously this is, just a stupid question by me mucking around. Who's funnier? We all knew that before, right? We didn't have to ask that. We all knew that.
You'll see my eye roll.
I saw the eye roll, but the reality is they're great interaction, and this is the thing for me. Zoom is this amazing tool, but we tend to use 5% of it. And you can go, if we kind of, if we use more of it, then what are the things that we can do? So
and Sarah, I think on that, like with do you prepare the polls in advance? Once you're comfortable with them, like I was on a call on Tuesday night where we were trying to get consensus about when were we going to meet. So while everyone was banging on about different days and times, I just did a quick poll, and set it out, and we did it in the moment. But the point is, you got to get comfortable with them before you can just sit there in the moment and bang one out. So set them up. And the nice thing is you can save polls. So if they're going to be something that the same question will be used across other webinars or other meetings, you can save the poll and push it out to another meeting, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, great little resource. What stops, even for me though, I think what stopped me from using them initially was just a little bit of the fear factor, of using it and all that kind of jazz. So, just use it. Just, that's the best advice I think you can have is just try stuff. One other little tip, and we're kind of packing them in here. We spoke, sorry, Sarah, I'll just answer that. See you, John Broadbent. Take care, mate. Sarah, I'm closing the polls. But there's quite a few settings in polls and advanced polls and quizzes. But I'm leaving it up there for as long as, and it tells me the percentage of people that have responded. So I'm looking for that little percentage. When it's high enough, then I can close it. And then it says, do you want to publish the results? It doesn't automatically share them because you might not want to. It might be bad. Like if I lost that who's funnier one, there's no way I would have shared that, right?
Particularly when the only option was you. And Sarah, exactly. you can make, depending on your audience, you can make that the responses are anonymous as well. So
yeah, great.
You don't have to see who's responding.
So Sarah, I'm only using one screen that I'm managing this. So most of it happens above and the audience don't see what's going on with the setting it up. You can see the map, you can sometimes see the cursor, which can be a little bit irritating. But that's an interesting kind of a point too as well. Just one other point, just in setting up webinars, there's templates in webinars as well that we mentioned. And Tracy and I we were chatting about this last night. The problem again here is, so you go here and you go, insert. So I put my topic in there. Then you write all of your copy in the description. Then you go, so which template am I going to use? When you pick a template, it deletes all of the copy from the topic and the description. So you've got to kind of go back and put it all in. So these are actually, in our view, around the wrong way. It should start with pick a template and then you fill in the data. So if you've experienced this, you'll know how frustrating it is to have to go back and write all of the copy. When I'm setting up that, I tend to write the copy in a Word document and cut and paste it in, because I got sick and tired of writing this genius copy that then was kind of gone, and I had to stop everything. I think we've had a look under the hood at webinars. We've run out of time anyway. There's a whole pile of stuff. Sorry, Fran, we're not going to get to whiteboards today. Do Tracy's masterclass. That's the best way. You'll be doing whiteboards in there. Our biggest bits of advice come from what we've already shared. Zoom is constantly evolving. Every time there's an update, there's something new. Now we've got things like, stay connected after meetings, Zoom chat.
Events are the things that got me excited.
Zoom events. We just scrolled through that settings page. Like literally that's changing on a regular basis. It's really worth your time to periodically, I do it whenever there's an update because it makes sense to do it then. And I just go, diary note, just check out what's changed because it's too hard to figure out who reads the note apart from Tracy saying what's new. But I guarantee that in the next 6 months, Zoom's got to really position itself a lot more because there's many more platforms that are starting to develop and it's getting a lot more competitive out there. Zoom, is one of the most expensive and there needs to be more value add. So we've got, transcription, different languages being able to be, brought. Imagine that, like you could pick, 20 languages to have your webinar broadcast in and people choose the language. This stuff is still clunky, but it's coming. If you want to have a global market all of a sudden, Zoom is going to be a tool that's really going to help you with that. So just kind of think a little bit about that as you're moving through. Again, look, that's a bit of a reminder. We'll send you some info to Tracy's masterclass. I think it's going to be great value, Tracy, to spend a couple of hours deep diving. Being Tracy, you'll, I'm sure, reach out to people, ask for specifics about what stuff you want to know about, and you'll be able to kind of tailor that a little bit as well. So kind of cool. And to be honest, we've kind of run out of time for questions, but we've answered as many as we can as we're going. So you want to find out more about Tracy Sheen, the digital guide, check her out, and you guys know about me. So I'm happy to stay on the line for a couple of minutes and answer a few quick questions. Tracy, I'm not sure how you're going.
Yeah, I'm happy. I can hang around. I'm only having pasta for lunch. It's ready in 8 minutes.
So thank you, everyone. If you've got to go. Really appreciate your time, your feedback. As always, if there's a topic that you want us to do a webinar on, or it's a topic that you want me or Tracy individually do a webinar on that's more up our individual fields, let us know. I love doing webinars and I find them a great way to connect and engage. And it's really lovely to do a webinar with you, Tracy Sheen.
And you, Andrew. Thank you as always. Sarah did have a question about, am I using an external mic? Yes, I am. My big mic has died, so I don't know if you can see. So that's my normal mic I use. So I have a little Rode USB mic, and it's great. You can adjust the gain. You can adjust all kinds of things. I would recommend, if you're planning on getting into doing more meetings and webinars and things, do spend a little bit of cash and get a decent mic. It makes a big difference.
The reason I'm using a headset here, I've got Rode mics and, Bluetooth and Yetis and God knows what else, is again, because of the environment. There's a little bit of background noise and I find that my Rode mic picks that up a little bit because it's actually a fabulous mic. So during certain hours when there's kind of background music on in the office where I'm at, it just becomes a little bit of an irritation for me. So I tend to use, this, and also just from a confidentiality point of view, that I'm used to doing coaching calls and I'm in a facility where people can walk by and kind of, listen to me listen to people sobbing uncontrollably, down the end of the line. And that's normally just me again, but, it's important.
Well, let's be real. I've had my fair share of couch moments with you. And I'm using a ring light and I have a bigger light behind me. Plus I've got windows full of natural light sitting off to my side. So it depends on the time of the day as to what lights I will bring in. AG, have you got a ring light or what's your light?
No, I just have a natural glow, really. It's, it's pretty.
It should touch up my appearance, right?
It's my touch up, and it's only on half. Like I'm ramping my touch-up appearance to full speed. I'm going to look like I'm about 24.
You'll look like one of those plushy dolls or something. Amy's got a question here. I find it hard to have some keynotes while presenting, like to keep me on track. is two screens the only answer. So you're, Amy, am I right? Like you want some notes and you don't want to be kind of looking off side. Is that? Yeah. Okay. Andrew, how do you get around that?
I have notes and but what I do is I make sure I position them near the camera, so that I'm constantly looking at the camera if I'm looking at my notes, around that. I don't think it matters, to be honest, 100%. I think what really matters when you're doing keynotes or meetings is that you're energetic, is that you're engaged, is that you're prepared, is that, like I'm often going off doing things, checking the phone, seeing what's happening on there. I've got another notebook here that I'm writing stuff. I don't know, does that take away for anyone in our webinar today? I think that people kind of get it, that you're all about, giving them knowledge, giving them information, helping them. I think that's far more important than worrying too much about, my notes and does it look like I'm off reading my notes? Don't stress about that, Amy. I honestly think that
and Amy, I mean, you know your stuff, right? So with Andrew and I mean, I've done Andrew's speaker course, so I highly recommend that. If you haven't done that, he's got one coming up in Tasmania, but we'll talk about that later. So any of the slides that we put across the screen is enough kind of to prompt the next thing that we've got to talk about. And it's got, so as Andrew taught me, his image has a story to it to remind him to tell the story that fits in with that, and that'll expand or contract depending on what's going on. So yes, I keep notes, particularly if there's a research, like if I want to talk about a stat or a piece of research or something and I want to make sure I get it right. But it's a bit like a wedding. No one knows what's supposed to happen except you. So if you miss something, no one really knows.
And most of the time we have no idea either.
Let's be truthful.
Lose perspective there. So, all right, I've got to go, folks. I've got a 2 o'clock that now I've got to head to. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, linesmen, ball boys, everyone that hung around till the end. Lovely to see everyone.
Thank you, ladies and gents. Recordings on my Facebook page. We'll send you a link to this recording as well, and a page and bits and pieces. So, so some stage in the next 24 hours. And we'll send you info about your masterclass coming up, Tracy. So what's going to be different about that compared to what we did today? Like, tell us why everyone should kind of come along to that.
Yeah, so we'll really have time to dive into those settings and really answer questions. The whiteboard, we didn't even get to touch on that. So they've got a classic whiteboard and a new whiteboard. So we'll be talking about the differences with that, talking about how to get the most out of, if you're using meetings, making sure that you can get in and change your settings, and how to set up a breakout room, and how to set up polls. So you'll be able to have your Zoom open at the same time, and as I'm going through something, you'll be able to go in, log in, and make sure that you're getting it done. If you're not getting it right, we can share your screen so we can hot seat and make sure that you're getting everything that you need as well. So it's really just more time and a deeper dive on everything to get what you need. So that's the big difference. I just had to giggle there. Wendy said, appreciate the laughs. I don't think she knows this was a serious endeavour, Andrew. Did nobody give her the lowdown?
Wendy Pavey, you're a troublemaker.
I know, right?
All right, guys. Take care, everyone. Thanks so much, folks. Have a beautiful day, and stay warm for those of you in the southern part of the country. And we'll talk to everyone soon.
See you soon.
Ciao, ciao.